According to the Taxpayer Relief Act of 1997, schools must file a 1098-T form for any enrolled student where a reportable transaction was made. What is a reportable transaction? Reportable transactions are tuition and fees, but we'll talk more about what should and shouldn't be reported a little later in this video. Let's begin with what information is required on Form 1098-T. Form 1098-T requires the school to provide the student's name, taxpayer identification number or TIN, address, the total dollar amount of payments made or billed to the student for qualified tuition and related expenses for the calendar year, along with the total amount of any grant aid or scholarships received within that calendar year. Now that you know what information is needed on Form 1098-T, let's talk about who should receive a Form 1098-T. In general, colleges and universities must file Form 1098-T for any individual enrolled for any academic period and for whom the institution bills or receives payment of qualified tuition and related expenses during the calendar year. Institutions also must file Forms 1098-T for students who are not currently enrolled, but for whom there was a prior year adjustment made in the current year. Form 1098-T does not need to be filed for students whose entire qualified tuition and related expenses were waived or paid for with a scholarship, students whose entire qualified tuition and related expenses were paid under a formal billing arrangement, non-resident aliens, except upon request, any non-credit courses in which a student is enrolled. Now let's get back to talking about reportable transactions, or more simply, what should and should not be reported on Form 1098-T. Institutions may choose to report either amounts paid for qualified tuition and related expenses in Box 1 or amounts billed in Box 2 on the Form 1098-T. The criteria for reporting payments in Box 1 or amounts billed in Box 2 allows you to report 1. Tuition and fees required for enrollment, and 2. Charges for books and supplies if the charges for these items are required to be paid to the institution. The criteria for Boxes 1 and 2 does not allow for the reporting of 1. Personal expenses to include room, board, insurance, medical, travel, etc., or 2. Any expenses for sports, games, or hobbies unless these are part of a degree program. Any grant aid or scholarship received by a student for payment of costs of attendance and processed and administered by the institution needs to be reported in Box 5. The form must include the name, address, and TIN of the institution or the service provider who filed the form, along with their contact information and telephone number. The name, address, and TIN of the student. You should also know that the IRS has strict deadlines when it comes to the issuance, correction, and filing of Form 1098-T. The 1098-T statement insurance deadline is January 31st. Next, any corrections must be completed from February 1st to March 31st. Finally, the submission of data to the IRS must take place by March 31st. If you are planning to process your institution's 1098-T tax forms in-house, you have many things to consider. Compliance with all IRS regulations, increased staffing for the processing, printing, and mailing of all 1098-T tax forms, managing corrections, additions, and deletions during the months of February and March, reprinting 1098-T forms for students who did not receive a printed copy, 24/7 system availability, so that your students can access their forms electronically, managing a large incoming call volume from students with questions about their forms, and finally, the transmission of the 1098-T IRS file submission. To learn more about 1098-T reporting and how Heartland ECSI can assist your school this upcoming tax season, contact us at 1-866-841-3274. or visit our resources page at www.heartlandecsi.com.